Have you ever had someone crash their own funeral? This week's case is about just that. So, let's get started. Hello everyone, my name is Brandy, and if you are new here, I bring you a true crime case or mystery every Friday with one or more of my fabulous felines. Did you see that fat little shit there? See how big she's getting? She does nothing but eat now. That's Darth Kittius. You know that tiny kitty we rescued a couple months ago? That's her now. She has a nickname. Darth was not cutting it for her to answer to, so we started calling her Murder Mittens because that fits her better. She's just ornery and she's constantly using her claws for everything, so we're in the middle of training her when and when not to use her claws, so that's fun. For my returning subscribers, welcome back, my feline friends, and a big shout out to my feline fans who help support this channel. I hope everyone had a happy holiday season. Taking that week off was actually amazing for me because I was off from my full-time job as well. Thank you very much for being patient. Sometimes we all just need a break. I was able to focus on some household stuff, like going through my old clothes and removing items I no longer wear because they're too small. Hey, don't judge. I like carbs. Speaking of clothes, just a merch update. The feline festive design featuring our adorable Freddy has been taken down from the merch shop until next year. I am going to add a new design soon. I'm just trying to figure out what I want to add and who I want to feature. I think about Ghost or Little Murder Mittens over there, but I am always up for suggestions too, so that if you have suggestions, please let me know what you'd like to see. Also, starting today, January 7th, and going through January 14th, the current sale is that all regular tees are only $15 and everything else is 10% off. So, link is in the description. Okay, on to this week's case. I know you guys, when we talked about the Ashley Reeves story, you guys loved that she actually survived. So I wanted to start off the new year with a true crime case, but also a good true crime case that ended well, and we have another survivor. So let's start with some history. Let's learn about Noela Rukundo. So Noela was born in Burundi, Africa. I'm sure I'm saying this wrong. I'm so sorry, but bear with me, please. Now, she had 5 children at the time, and she was actually a refugee. She was able to immigrate to Australia in 2004. Now, after getting to Australia, she was working with a resettlement agency for refugees to get them set up with jobs, housing, stuff like that. Now, Noela only spoke Swahili. She didn't speak English or anything like that. So when she worked with her social worker at this resettlement agency, they had to bring in a interpreter. Now, this interpreter was a man named Balanga Kalala, K-A-L-A-L-A. Kalala. Anyway, Balanga Kalala was his name. Now, Balanga had also arrived in Australia in 2004, and he was a refugee as well. He had originally came from the Congolese Africa, which is part of the Congo. Now, he was able to come to Australia after, unfortunately, he lived in this village and this rebel army had come through with, machetes and guns and had just decimated the village. And unfortunately, his wife and very young son, his son was like 1 year old, was killed by this rebel army. He spent some time in a refugee camp in Africa until he was able to get to Australia. Now, once he got to Australia, he was working with this resettlement agency as well. Him and Noela had shared the same social worker, so it came in handy that he was an interpreter as well, because he did speak English. So Belenga ended up finding a job as a forklift operator, and I'm not sure if Noela had a job. I assume she did, but otherwise she was probably home taking care of the children as a homemaker, because she had 5 kids when she came to Australia. Now, because Belenga and Noela spent a lot of time together working at this resettlement agency and with the same social worker, they became friends and then soon started dating. And within a year, they were married. So in 2005, they moved in together and they got married. Now, over the next 10 years of their marriage, it was okay, I guess. There wasn't a lot of insight that Noela shares into the marriage, but they did end up having 3 more children together. So in total, there were 8 children in the house. Now, Noela would say that Belenga was violent, and he had some PTSD from, when the rebel army killed his family. And his violence was often brought on by just some jealousy. But she stated she loved him, and she never really said he abused her or hit her or the kids or anything. But, she just did everything she could to make the marriage work. Now, 10 years after they get married, it's February of 2015, and Noela's stepmother has passed away. Now, Noela was pretty close with her stepmother. She stated that she had lost the last person who she would call mother, so it was safe to assume that her biological mother had passed before this. So Noela wanted to travel from Australia back to Africa to attend her stepmother's funeral. Now, she did end up going alone. She didn't take her husband or any of her children, but some of her family still lived in Africa. So her brother lived there and stuff. So, she was meeting family there, but she did decide to stay in a hotel. Now, after the funeral that day, Noela stated that, she was just sad and stressed, and she just wanted to go back to her hotel room and, just sleep. As she, climbed in her bed, her phone rang, and it was her husband, Belenga, just, checking on her. Now, she told Belenga that she was tired and that she was just going to go to bed. But Belenga started questioning her. He's like, it is so early. You shouldn't be just sleeping. I know you're sad and everything, but, maybe you should just go out and get some fresh air. Just leave the hotel, go out, get some fresh air. And he was kind of insistent about it. Noela, thought her husband is just concerned about her, wants her to, just kind of, and she said, I could use some fresh air. So she hung up the phone and she went out of the hotel. And as she left the hotel, there was this gate that she went through, and she was just kind of standing in the street. Now, she wasn't standing there for very long when a man was walking straight towards her. And of course she, got her attention, because she's like, why? I don't know this man. Why is he walking towards me? And then all of a sudden he pulled out a gun and he said, "Don't scream or I will shoot you." Noela was really scared and she didn't want to be shot, so she didn't scream. She didn't do anything. And then the man said, "You're going to come with me." And he kind of grabbed her and he led her to a car that was nearby and put her in the car in the back seat. And she was sat between 2 other men. So there was 3 men total in this. So the man with the gun got in the driver's seat, and then she was put in the back seat between the 2 men, and a scarf was then put over her face so she couldn't see where they were going. Now, Noela stayed quiet and just kind of didn't know what to do. And about 30 or 40 minutes later, the car had come to a stop finally. So the men got out of the car and they pulled Noela out of the car, and they brought her into this abandoned warehouse building, and then they tied her to a chair. Noela was about to ask why me? What's going on? But one of the men spoke before she could, and he said, "What did you do to this man? Why is this man asking us to kill you?" Of course, Noela was really confused, and she responded "What man? What are you talking about? I don't have a problem with anyone." And the man said, your husband. Noela was a little shocked, but she's like, no, you're lying. My husband and I, we love each other. You're lying. The man then walked up to Noela and like backhanded her across the face to shut her up. The man then got out his phone and he told Noela, I'm going to call the man that paid us to kill you and you will see it's your husband. He then dialed the phone and then he put it on speaker. To Noela's horror, her husband answered the phone. This man, this kidnapper, had told Belanga, he said, I got your wife. She's here with us. To which Belanga replied, good. Killer. Hearing those words, killer, from her husband, she kind of went into this shock. Like she felt her head was just going to explode. She couldn't wrap her head around what was going on and she just started panicking. The man and Belanga started discussing specifics and the man was telling Belanga how he was going to get rid of her body, where they're going to, dump her body after the job was done. And Noela was so upset and so in shock and just trying to manage what she was hearing. She ended up passing out. Now, Noela hadn't passed out for too long. She began to start regaining consciousness. And as she regained consciousness, the kidnapper and her husband had ended their conversation. Now, her head was still spinning. She was still trying to figure out, like, what is going on? This cannot be real, right? Like, I'm dreaming, right? All this is like, she told herself that she's tied to a chair. These men have guns. She can't leave. And she kind of gave up and was like, I'm going to die. There's nothing I can do or say to save myself. But that's when the guy that, kidnapped her, put her at gunpoint, had walked up to her and he looked at her and he said, we're not going to kill you. We don't kill women and children. Noela, of course, was a little shocked. But she listened, and the man continued and said, oh, we're going to keep the money that your husband sent us, and we're going to tell him that we killed you, but we're not really going to kill you. He went on to explain that her husband, he called him her stupid husband, had already paid them what was equivalent to $5,300 clear back in November. Now remember, this is February of 2015. Belanga had paid these men $5,300 back in November of 2014 to kill his wife. Now, apparently, Noela's stepmother was declining in health, was in hospice, and it was, expected that she was going to pass very soon. So, Belanga had set this all up in November, knowing that Noela was going to travel to Africa to be a part of her stepmother's funeral. The man even asked Noela, he paid us in November. Have you not noticed any difference in your marriage from November till now? You didn't notice any difference. Like, are you stupid? Like, he kept calling Noela and Belanga stupid. Now, Noela was, again, sort of confused and shocked and was trying to wrap her head around everything that she was hearing. So she just began kind of chatting with the men and everything, knowing that they weren't going to kill her. Then, a little bit later, she heard the man on the phone again. And the man was on the phone with her husband, Belanga, again. She thought to herself, okay, this man is nice enough not to kill women and children, so she was going to be spared. But he was on the phone with Belanga. Again, she overheard it because he kept putting it on speaker, that the man was asking Belanga for an additional $1,700 because the kidnapping part was done, but the actual killing part was going to cost him more money. So he was asking for an additional $1,700 be wired through Western Union to them, which Belanga did. Now, the three men ended up holding Noela for 2 days before they let her go. During this time that she was captured, Noela's brother had actually gone to the hotel that Noela was staying at, to check on her, make sure she was doing okay, because she was very upset about her stepmother's passing. Well, he couldn't find her, and he began to get real worried when, like, she didn't come back that night. None of the family knew where she was at. He actually called Belanga and said, did she go home early? And Belanga's like, no, fully knowing that he was trying to kill his wife, which is terrible. Noela's brother ended up going to the police. Now, some of the African police departments are very corrupt. And from the research I've done, is that these policemen take bribes. And bribes were really sort of the norm in some of these districts and some of these regions. Now, not only did criminals pay police bribes to get out of, the crimes that they've done, but it was normal that if someone actually, wanted the police to do their job, like open an investigation on a missing person, they wouldn't do it unless they got a little money. So Noela's brother, who was, their family was very poor, he didn't have the money to bribe the police to open an investigation on Noela's disappearance. So he had called Noela's husband Belanga in Australia and was like, can you wire me $545 so that I can go bribe the police in order to open this investigation about her disappearance? Now, Belanga on the phone, of course, feigned concern and, oh, where's my wife, and blah, blah, blah. Dick. But he did end up wiring the money to Noela's brother, and Noela's brother then went and bribed the police to try to find Noela. So 2 days after Noela had been kidnapped from in front of the hotel, the men kept their word and let her go. They drove her to an isolated road and told her to get out of the car. They were leaving her pretty much on the side of the road. But before driving off, the leader, the main guy that she'd been talking to this whole time, he told Noela that she had 80 hours to leave Africa. He went on to say that her husband was very serious about killing her, and that he may have hired other people to kidnap her as well, and they may not be as nice. He also stated that, in the 2 days that they kept her captive, they had several conversations with her, and they realized that they knew her brother. And they actually liked her brother. The brother that was actually, bribing the police to do something. They liked her brother, and that was another reason why they said they weren't going to kill her. Then they did something that shocked Noela to the core. The man handed her over some stuff. They handed her a phone where she could, call for help, and they handed her a memory card. And he explained on this memory card is all the conversations that they had had with Belanga plotting her murder. And then in the end, they handed over the Western Union receipts to her, showing the money coming from Belanga to them, which of course they were listed as anonymous. If you don't know, if you never used Western Union before, you can get away with a lot of fraud with that. That's why people say never use Western Union. The Western Union receipts totaled $7,000. So he paid $7,000 to these men to kill Noela. The man then told her, you must learn something. You people get a chance to go overseas and start a new life away from, this corruption and crime and poverty. And then all you do with the money that you make over there is you send it back here to people like us and want to kill each other. He goes, go back to Australia and you tell those people and you tell other stupid women like yourself what happened here. It's a bit eye-opening when hitmen are trying to teach you a lesson. Like, I'm sure these men have killed before. Probably not women and children if you believe them, but they've probably killed men. Otherwise, how did Belanga find them? They're well known somehow in some circle. I mean, here's this guy, this kidnapper, who is probably scraping by, and I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for him, but he's scraping by, trying to survive, and that's probably why he's in the line of work he is. Because getting $7,000, even splitting it between 3 people, it probably goes a long way in Africa. But he can still recognize someone when they need to appreciate what they have. And he's not necessarily lecturing Noela. He's lecturing Noela because of Belanga. Belanga is the one that doesn't know what he has. And he just wants to get that message to him through Noela. I guess you're never going to know where you're going to learn a life lesson from. Now, back in Australia, Belanga has gotten word from these men that the job is done. Noela is gone. Her body's been dumped. Okay? Now, Belanga then began the task of informing family and friends in Australia that Noela, she had a very tragic accident in Africa. I lost my wife and I'm stuck with 8 children. Please donate money to me. I mean, I'm not sure what type of accident he was telling people or if he was just being vague, but that's what he was telling everyone, that she was just in a tragic accident and she died. Okay. So then he started the funeral arrangements. And a lot of people, of course, you know, rallied around him and supported him. I mean, he has 8 kids now to take care of. Here's some money. So he starts planning the funeral. Okay. Now, Noela was in the middle of arranging travel back to Australia, and she used the local embassies to help her. Now, when she finally secured the travel, she, and then, you know, informed the police that investigation was closed, but they're really not going to open another investigation about her kidnapping because there's no padding, I guess. So she called the pastor of her church in Australia because she knew that obviously, you know, he would help with funeral arrangements since her and her husband and her children had been active members of that church for over 10 years. She told the pastor the entire story, which she said it took a little bit for the pastor to believe it because he just could not believe that Belanga would be capable of something like that. But she's like, I didn't either, but I'm here to tell you. I went through it. And she asked him, please do not tell anybody that I'm alive because I have a plan. So 3 days later, she arrived in Melbourne, Australia. She found out through talking to her pastor that her husband was going to hold this funeral, this wake at their house because, you know, there was no body to view in a casket and all that stuff. So they were just going to hold kind of like this bodiless wake funeral type thing. She rented a car and she pulled up in front of her house and she just watched and waited. Now, Noela had watched the stream of family and friends, you know, go in and out of the house. Now, Noela waited until about 7:30 p.m. at night, and that's when the last of the mourners were leaving. Belanga had walked them to their car, and after they drove off, Noela got out of her car and just stood in front of Belanga. Now, Belanga was obviously shocked, and he started to walk towards Noela, like very carefully, like he wasn't really believing that she was there. Then he like reached out and touched Noela on the shoulder, like, oh my God, you're real. And he was like, Noela, is that really you? Is this a ghost I'm seeing? And Noela said, surprise, I'm still alive. At that point, Belanga just started screaming and just said, I'm so sorry, and apologizing, and he was sorry for everything and to please forgive him for everything. But, you know, Noela was like, no. And she called the police. Hello! Hello, darling. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I would have waited for everyone to leave. I probably would have showed up and like right after the funeral started and just busted my way into the house. And I would probably make some smart ass insulting comment like, you really can't do anything right, can you? God. But I mean, I'm morbid like that, so. Noela called the authorities, handed over the evidence that she got from Africa, and Belanga was taken into custody. Now, at the police station, Belanga, like, denied any involvement in this murder plot. Like, he was just denied. I didn't do anything, you know. The problem was, like, there was no clear motive of why he would wanted Noela dead. Like, there was 8 children to take care of by himself if she was gone. She didn't have any, like, life insurance. There was no huge payout. And even with the financial support he was getting from the community, it was less than probably $10,000. So it's not like he was, you know, gaining anything from this. So, like, the why, the motive just wasn't there. So the police had a plan, though, and they were having trouble. Even though they had this evidence, they were kind of having trouble, like, you know, we got to have a motive for court. They told Noela, you need to call Belenga while he was sitting in jail. You need to call him and just talk. See if he says anything, okay? So Noela called Belenga while he was sitting in jail, which, of course, those phone calls are monitored and recorded. And the plan worked. Belenga confessed everything to Noela about how he hired these men and he wanted to kill her. And then he was like begging her forgiveness. Like, he just wanted everything to go back to normal. Let's forget about everything. Sorry I tried to kill you. We'll just go back to our marriage and make it work. Of course, Noela was like, yeah, no. So now the police had evidence of his confession on this recorded call. Now they had the motive. Why did Belenga want her dead, you ask? Well, Belenga was under the impression that Noela was having an affair and that Noela was going to leave him for another man. Now, Noela wasn't surprised by his jealousy because she's been dealing with it for 10 years. But she is adamant, I did not have an affair, nor was there any evidence that she was having an affair, nor had an affair ever. So again, this was just Belenga and his out of control jealousy. And where did Belenga, you know, a forklift driver with 8 kids, get the money, get $7,000 in order to pay these men to kill his wife? He took a home equity loan out on the house. So after Belenga was presented with, you know, the evidence that Noela brought from Africa, the recorded call where he confessed everything to Noela, he finally broke down and he just started crying. And he did admit that he did do this. He stated he didn't know why he did it. That the only explanation was that sometimes the devil can come into a person and make them do something. And then after they do that something, they wonder why they did what they did. Did you get all that? The devil made him do it pretty much. And then he regretted it later. Probably because you got caught, dude. Now, Belenga ended up pleading guilty in the court to incitement of murder. And he was sentenced to 9 years in prison with the eligibility of parole after 6. Is it fair? I mean, technically, she didn't get hurt. I mean, she was kidnapped, which was scary. I don't know. I mean, what does usually somebody get? I mean, I've known people in the U.S. get, like, life in prison for planning a murder. But that's usually because the person does die. Is 9 years enough? I don't know. But that's what he got. Now, Noela, she's doing her best to try to move on with her life, with her 8 children. But it hasn't exactly been easy. Some of the community where she lives actually blamed her. Like, she became a villain because she reported her husband to the police. Now, these individuals that, you know, blamed her and made her out to be this villain, they were from the same area of Africa in the Congo as Belenga was. So apparently there was some sort of sympathy because they came from the same area. Or maybe Africa's such a dangerous place in certain parts that, like, a murder plot is very minor compared to everything else that goes on. I mean, I don't know, but these people, they were mad at her. She stated she got some death threats, and her house got broken into and vandalized a couple times, so she did not feel safe. Now, Noela had asked the Department of Human Services to find her a new, safer place to live with her 8 children. Noela states that, you know, she still has nightmares about not about the kidnapping, because the men were actually nice to her. She has nightmares about hearing the words, kill her, out of her husband's mouth. Like, you know, she loved this man for 10 years of marriage, and he just was ready to offer because he was jealous. But she said she will stand up and she will be a strong woman for her children and start a new life. She had also stated that Belenga is just a human, and humans aren't perfect, so she does not judge him. She will let God do that, and that she does forgive him for what he's done. I don't know if I could be that forgiving. I mean, my husband and I have been married, it'll be 22 years in March, and if he took a murder plot out on me, I mean, that's some deep hurt right there. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it's one thing if somebody walks through the door and goes, hey, I want a divorce, but when they're about to kill you, that's just insane, off the charts. Deep hurt, broken heart. I wouldn't be able to handle it. I would probably go insane. Belenga was eligible for parole after serving 6 of his 9 years in prison. So he was eligible for parole. It would have been like December 2021, so last month. Whether he got out or not, I'm not sure. I can't find any updates on him, so sorry. I tried. The men that Belenga had hired in Africa to take out Noela, of course, they were never caught nor, identified even. So nobody really pursued that end of things. So I would love to hear what you think about this story in the comments down below. I'm so glad that Noela survived her ordeal and that she actually ran into killers with a conscience, I guess. Jeez, lucky woman. If you'd like to become a feline friend, please hit that subscribe button. And if you would like to become a feline fan, please hit that join button for special perks on this channel. She's up there if you want. If nobody was paying attention to the cats, which you probably paid attention to the cats, not me, but Darth Kidius, aka Murder Mittens, that's her favorite spot to sleep right now. So thank you, everyone. Later.